We've got some breaking news here on this Wednesday morning as we sit here to record. Brett McMurphy, former colleague for some of us, was at Stadium, now at the Action Network. He has arrived with a big-time scoop, and it is that the Nebraska football program is under investigation by the NCAA. Okay, with a lot of ways we can follow this. Among the allegations, according to the report, is that improper use of analysts, as well as very similar to Arizona State, at least in my reading of the situation, carrying on team activities in a way that did not follow the rules of the time. So before we get into these SEC West win totals, we wanted to give just a quick minute on this because we will be releasing this episode right away as soon as we're done. Are you concerned? Very concerned? Does this impact at all your expectations for Nebraska on the field, or is this more big picture? How are you digesting and attacking this story? I'll tell you what, Danny, you had Brett on the radio show like less than an hour ago. What did he say, and what kind of further insight were you able to gather?
Just that this is trouble for Scott Frost. I mean, stating the obvious, that he's got sources. The school has video that they've given to the NCAA, which clearly shows some of these workouts that were taking place. They've got video of the analyst on the field working with the players, which you're not allowed to do with an analyst role. It's supposed to be hands off. You can analyze, but you can't coach on the field. And they have video evidence of that. But of all the things like that I asked Brett that I was kind of surprised that he said was like, do you think this is Nebraska trying to get out of Scott Frost's deal? I asked him that. And he said, well, they've had this investigation going on for a year. They could have done it by now. So I take it for what it's worth. I still think this does look awful. I think if you were looking for a reason to get out of Scott Frost's contract, you could do it easily right now. But I also think maybe they want to give it one more run, like kind of see what happens. Like, let's see, like to see if you can capture lightning in a bottle, if they can get 8 or 9 wins, which I think we all agree is highly unlikely. And then with a fan base that I do think is torn because they love their returned hero coming back to save the program. And there's a faction of it's like, let's just stick with him. He's our guy. But I think there's also starting to be a growing faction that's looking at saying this isn't working. And I think the people that are writing the checks, the people that matter, are probably looking at alternative options. And one way to get out of this contract would be this investigation.
My first thought was that this is exactly out of the Kansas with David Beatty and Tennessee with Jeremy Pruitt and company, those playbooks, right? It's schools that had a buyout they didn't want to pay, a buyout that they probably couldn't pay. It would be prohibitive. In Tennessee's case is the same as Nebraska. They really bid against themselves for an unnecessary contract extension that they gave to Pruitt. Who the hell was going to hire Jeremy Pruitt away? No idea. Who was going to hire Scott Frost away? Again, no idea. But now with this buyout around $25 million for Scott Frost, there's no need to fire him before the season. But if you have all this evidence, and they have a lot of video evidence, according to Brett McMurphy's reporting, that's a pretty nice little chip you have there. Like, hey, let's negotiate this buyout down some. We have reason for cause. These always get litigated. I don't think this will be a $25 million or $0 sum in the end, assuming that it does go down. And it's hard for me to see Scott Frost working out at Nebraska now in the long term, especially because they were terrible last year, despite all of these illicit practices that they had, which doesn't give me a whole lot of confidence, for this season. A lot of stuff they've done in recruiting has not worked out. Many of their higher rated players fizzled out pretty quickly and are no longer on the roster. But that was my initial reaction is, hey, this gives them leverage to pull a Kansas or to pull a Tennessee and fire for cause.
Why does Nebraska and Tennessee have to keep doing the same things to each over and over again? They are the exact same program. Now they're trying to fire their coaches in the exact same way. They've had the same kind of down year since the late 90s. And also, like, if you go back and we look, you wonder, like, as you said, this has been going on for a while. Nebraska has video of it, and they're using this in their own investigation, all that kind of stuff. Did this play a role in Bill Moose being fired? Is this part of it? Was that part of it? Because I'm sorry, Bill Moose retired, but
retired.
Yeah. Big retire.
Surprisingly, with a lot of money left on his deal at 70, which is not that old.
That was only 7 weeks ago, though, and the replacement, Trev Alberts, who's a Nebraska legend, has only been on the job. Today is his 31st day on the job. So to push back on McMurphy's idea that if they were doing this to fire him, they could have already done it. That's true, But a new AD who played on those legendary Tom Osborne Nebraska teams, he could want maybe more than just a month. And who wants to make a coaching hire before a season starts? Let the investigation play out. Let's let the season play out, and then you have all the leverage in the world to do what you need to do.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
It's really important now, I think, that Nebraska gets off to a very good start to the season, because if they get out, like they started Illinois, if they lose that game, and with this story going on in the background, and then Oklahoma looming a few weeks after that, I don't know if Scott Frost gets through October.
So there is a potential, though. We've got a lot of doom and gloom here, and so before we move on, I want to at least say, can Scott Frost win his way out of this? Can he? Based on what we know, and we've got a lot more to learn, do you think that there could be an assistant coach that ends up jumping on the grenade here? There could be ways that this gets played off. The NCAA will often come at the head coach with a lack of institutional control, failure to monitor. They have some language to be able to hold a coach accountable, even if they're able to prove, I didn't know about any of this. Do you think that the video evidence includes like Scott Frost out there? Are his hands that dirty with this that you think that no matter how this ends up, even if Nebraska has a good season, we could be headed towards a change of head coach?
Well, if Nebraska has a great season or a good season and Scott Frost is still involved, there'll be penalties, but I think Scott Frost would survive. Like if you're winning,
he would ride through if they make the bowl. If they make a bowl game, then you think Nebraska would hold on to him?
We'll deal with some of these penalties that are likely going to come if we feel like we're actually finally heading in the right direction. And there is a scenario that's not that crazy anymore, because Illinois is a winnable game for Nebraska. And they get Fordham and a Buffalo team that lost its coaching staff and some of its best players. So who knows what that team's going to look like. At Oklahoma, I don't think anybody expects them to win that game anyway, but now all of a sudden then you get the Michigan State game on the road. That's winnable. And that Northwestern game, that's a team that, has lost its starting running back for the season, lost an offensive lineman, and they named Hunter Johnson the starting quarterback. That game suddenly looks a lot more winnable. So it's not entirely out of the picture that Nebraska could get off to a good start. It's just whatever start it is, this story will be the root of it. It'll either be the problem that's caused this team to quit, or it'll be the rallying cry in the narrative.
You know what they should do? They should go bring back the little red uniform. Say, hey, let's go back to that. Remember those, what turned out not to be true? They should actually go through with it now just to distract everybody.
Our guy, Ted Hyman at 24/7 Sports made those for a post of like kind of funny uniforms teams should wear.
Yeah, based off their mascot, because Oregon had the duck uniform. So they based it. So I saw it because you alerted me to that. So then I found the article. So he said, what would all the uniforms look like if they were based off their mascots? And that's where it originated, which was hilarious because no one could find out. Is this real? Is this real or not? But you put me onto it. Said, nope, it's not real. Maybe now they wish it was. That was what we were talking about.
Are we all kind of surprised that Oregon actually hasn't done a duck uniform?
We're on combination like what? Like
that's what I'm saying. I'm surprised they haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah, we'll get there anyway. Lil Red, repulsive. Looks like a guy who picks his boogers and puts them on the underside of the desk. You go at the end of the year and the teacher's just disgusted by what this little kid's been doing in the back. All right.
He looks like Ralphie May. Remember the comedian? I think he's deceased.
Yeah.
But Ralphie May, the real big comedian who wore his hat backwards, I think. Like that's who he reminds me of, Lil Red, for some reason.